In a significant development, NATO has announced its decision to suspend the CFE, Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe, disarmament agreement, according to Reuters. Before we dive in details, please subscribe to the channel and stay always one step ahead to know all global important events happening around you. Give a thumbs up and share the video with your family and friends. Let's move on with the video. This decision comes in response to Russia's recent withdrawal from the treaty, a move that has been widely condemned by the alliance. The CFE agreement, initially established in November 1990, was a crucial component of the post-Cold War era. It was signed by NATO and Warsaw Pact countries, including the Soviet Union, East Germany, and several other Eastern European nations. The treaty played a pivotal role in reducing the number of conventional weapons in Europe, setting limits on the stockpiling of tanks, armored vehicles, artillery, combat aircraft, and attack helicopters by participating countries. In May, Russia signaled its intentions to exit the treaty and has now fully implemented this decision. NATO, in a statement, expressed its condemnation of Russia's action, viewing it as a direct violation of the treaty's objectives and an act that further undermines European Atlantic security. NATO specifically highlighted Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine as contrary to the principles of the CFE agreement. The updated version of the CFE treaty, adopted in 1999, aimed to align the agreement with the security realities of Europe, North America, and the former Soviet Union post-Cold War. The original treaty was signed by 16 NATO countries and 6 Warsaw Pact members. NATO has declared that the suspension of the CFE agreement will remain in effect as long as necessary, underscoring the seriousness of the current situation. However, the exact date when the suspension will take effect has not been specified. This development marks a critical juncture in NATO-Russian relations and reflects the ongoing tensions and security challenges in Europe. NATO's decision to suspend the CFE treaty is seen as a response to Russia's actions, which are perceived as systematically eroding the stability and security of the European Atlantic region. What is the CFE treaty, and why does it matter? Let's dive right into it. The Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe, or CFE as it's often referred to, isn't just another piece of paper. It's a cornerstone of security that has kept the peace in Europe for decades. Signed in 1990 at the tail end of the Cold War, it was a groundbreaking agreement between NATO and the then Warsaw Pact countries. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the treaty. The CFE was designed to create a military balance between the two major power blocks in Europe. The treaty put a cap on the number of tanks, armored combat vehicles, heavy artillery, combat aircraft, and attack helicopters that each side could have. The idea was simple. An equilibrium in conventional weaponry would prevent any one power from becoming too dominant and threatening the stability of the continent. 22 countries originally signed the treaty, including the United States, Russia, Germany, and the United Kingdom, to name a few. Over the years, the treaty has been adapted and adjusted to reflect the changing dynamics of Europe, but its core principles have remained the same: transparency, balance, and stability. The CFE treaty did more than just limit the amount of heavy weaponry in Europe. It also established a system of information exchange and on-site inspections. This transparency helped build trust between countries, making it harder for misunderstandings to escalate into conflicts. But the treaty wasn't just about cold, hard numbers and inspections. It was also about fostering dialogue and cooperation. It provided a framework for countries to discuss their security concerns and work together to address them. The CFE treaty has been a cornerstone of European security, but it has recently come under threat. As we move forward, it's crucial to understand the significance of this treaty and the role it has played in maintaining peace and stability in Europe. So what led to the suspension of the CFE treaty, you might ask? It's a story of escalating tensions and consequential decisions that have altered the landscape of global politics. It began with the Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe, or CFE, a disarmament agreement established at the end of the Cold War. This treaty was a cornerstone of European security, limiting the number of heavy weapons that could be deployed between the Atlantic Ocean and the Ural Mountains. It was a symbol of cooperation and mutual trust among nations. However, the harmony didn't last. A pivotal moment came when Russia announced its withdrawal from the treaty. This decision sent ripples through the international community, with many viewing it as a sign of Russia's growing assertiveness on the global stage. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, was among those who condemned Russia's withdrawal. As an alliance committed to safeguarding the freedom and security of its members, NATO took Russia's decision seriously. After all, the CFE treaty was a significant part of the security architecture that had helped maintain peace in Europe for decades. Following Russia's withdrawal, NATO was faced with a tough decision. After much deliberation, they announced their decision to suspend the CFE disarmament agreement. This was not a decision made lightly. It was a response to a changed security environment, a reflection of the new realities on the ground. The suspension of the CFE treaty was more than just a diplomatic move. It signaled a shift in the global political landscape. The norms and agreements that had once shaped international relations were being questioned, and in this case, suspended. It was a clear message that NATO would not stand by while the rules of the game were being changed. The suspension of the CFE treaty marks a significant shift in the global political landscape. This is not an end, but a new beginning. A new chapter in the story of international politics. As we move forward, it's clear that the decisions made today will shape the world of tomorrow. What does the suspension of the CFE treaty mean for global politics and security? This question has been echoing in the halls of power around the world. The answer, however, is far from simple. The suspension of the Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe, a cornerstone of post-Cold War security in Europe, is a seismic event that could potentially reshape the geopolitical landscape. For NATO and Russia, this development marks a significant turning point in their relations, potentially triggering a new era of heightened tensions and uncertainty. The security situation in Europe could become increasingly volatile. This treaty has long served as a stabilizing force, ensuring a balance of conventional military forces between NATO and Russia. Its suspension could lead to an arms race, escalating tensions, and increasing the risk of conflict. This is a scenario that Europe, still healing from the scars of 2 world wars, can ill afford. But the implications of this decision reach far beyond the borders of Europe. It's a ripple effect that could reverberate across the globe, impacting international relations and security. Countries may begin to question the effectiveness of multilateral treaties and alliances, potentially undermining global efforts toward disarmament and non-proliferation. The suspension of the CFE treaty is not just a regional issue, it's a global one. It's a stark reminder that the world is intricately interconnected, that decisions made in one corner of the globe can have profound effects on the other. It's a call to action for the international community to come together, to engage in dialogue and to work toward solutions that promote peace and stability. The suspension of the CFE treaty is a wake-up call for the world, highlighting the urgent need for dialogue and cooperation. It's a reminder that in this new political era, we must strive harder than ever to bridge the gaps that divide us, for the sake of our shared security and our shared future. Let's take a moment to recap what we've discussed. NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, plays a significant role in maintaining global security. Its importance is underscored by its reaction to Russia's withdrawal from the CFE treaty, a key instrument for European disarmament and peacekeeping since the end of the Cold War. The suspension of this treaty, initiated by NATO in response to Russia's decision, marks a significant shift in the geopolitical landscape. It's a move that reflects the tensions and complexities of international relations in the 21st century. The potential implications are manifold. They could range from a shift in power dynamics to a redefinition of the rules that govern international conduct. This development underscores the crucial role of alliances like NATO in ensuring peace and stability. It also highlights the need for robust dialogue, cooperation, and understanding among nations in a rapidly evolving global political landscape. The suspension of the CFE treaty is a reminder that in the complex world of global politics, alliances like NATO are more important than ever.